Genesis chapter 37. We come to the story of one of the greatest people in the Bible. A man by the name of Joseph. It's interesting to me that 1/4 of the book of Genesis is devoted to his story. 25% of the book, approximately, is devoted to this story, the story of Joseph. And the reason that intrigues me is because the Lord devoted 5 words to explaining the universe. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 16, where it says, "And he made the stars also." Is that 6 words? It was 5 or 6 words there in Genesis chapter 1, where he explains all of the cosmos, the universe. He made the stars also. That's 5. He made the stars also. There it is. So in 5 words, he explains, if you would, the existence and creation of the universe. But he takes chapter after chapter after chapter to talk about a single individual. Now, I would have thought that it would have been reversed. That he would spend 4 or 5 or 6 words on a man and spend chapter after chapter after chapter on the universe. Because that's what so often interests us. The stars, space, what's beyond our world, how it came to be, what goes on out there. But that's not God's priority. God simply sums up the creation of that which is beyond us in 5 words, but he takes chapter after chapter talking about Joseph, for you see, and this is the key. Joseph is a powerful, is a beautiful picture of Jesus Christ. And that's why so much time is devoted to his story. Joseph, as we will see, anywhere you touch in the story of Joseph, you'll find insights about Jesus, or prophecies that point to Jesus, or understandings about the nature of Jesus. Wherever you touch Joseph, you'll find Jesus. In fact, he's only one of 2 people in the Old Testament, that is, major characters, of whom there is mentioned no sin. The other one is Daniel. But Joseph has no recorded sin. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't sin, for the Bible says all have sinned. But his sin is not mentioned because he lived a life of purity and integrity in a way that is awesome, as we shall see. He pictures Jesus. And of course, Jesus was without sin. And guess who got the big sleeves? The coat with pieces. It was Joseph. Joey. And man, Joseph's 10 older brothers were ticked off that Dad gave him the coat with the big sleeves, made him the big kahuna, the big cheese. The brothers saw, verse 4, that their father loved him more than all of them, and they hated him. And they could not speak peaceably unto him. Now, who does this remind you of? Who else was hated by his brothers? Because he was favored by the Father, in harmony with the Father, Jesus. Remember what John chapter 1 says to us? He came unto his own, but his own what? Received him not. They hated him. We will not have this man, they would say. We will not have this man rule over us. Away with him. Crucify him. So you can see Jesus, you see, caring about the Father's flock, submitted to the Father's will, hated by his own brothers, though, and then the plot thickens. Joseph dreamed a dream. Verse 5. And he told his brothers, and they hated him yet the more. He said, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood round about and made obeisance to my sheaf. That's gutsy. For little Joey, at 17, to say to this group of 10 grown men, I had a dream last night, guys, and all of your sheaves, they bowed down to my sheaf. You know what a sheaf is? It's like wheat that's tied together. And all of your sheaves bowed down to mine. His brothers, verse 8, said, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Again, you can see, you can hear the story of Jesus, can't you? We're not going to have you, they said concerning Jesus. We're not going to have him reign over us. Shall you reign over us? Shall you have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. Well, he dreamed yet another dream. Verse 9. And he told it his brethren. And he said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. Behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars. Because he has 11 brothers, 10 older, and then little Benjamin, who was younger. The 11 stars made obeisance to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren. His father rebuked him and said, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother, which would be the sun and the moon, and thy brethren, which are the 11 stars, shall we indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee, to the earth? His brethren, verse 11, envied him, but his father observed the saying. His father said, after initially rebuking Joseph, what do you mean? Are you suggesting that even me and your mother are going to bow down to you? Is that what you mean by this dream? But then Dad backed away and he thought it through that day and he said, I better take note of this. Why would Joseph do this? Why would he share these dreams with those guys? I mean, after dream number 1, they hated him. And then he comes with dream number 2. And you think he's just asking for problems. Because like Jesus, Joseph is going to speak the truth, even if the truth is unpopular or offensive. Listen, folks. It would have been very easy for Joseph to not share this stuff and say, hey, I already have the big sleeves, which gives me a big headache as far as these guys are concerned. They're after me. They're angry with me. They don't want anything to do with me. Why should I complicate it with this dream about the sheaves? Then he shares that. Well, why should I now pile on with this dream about the stars? Because like Jesus, Joseph knew that truth had to be shared and let the chips fall where they may. I'm sure that Joseph was a very loving, sensitive young man. I'm sure he was not arrogant or boastful or power happy, but he was a man who knew that he had a responsibility to share truth. One of the worst things that you can do to a person is to flatter them when you know that the flattery is not reality. See, Joseph was a guy who said, I know that this isn't going to go down well with y'all, but it's the truth. I had this dream, and your sheaves all bound down to my sheaf. And then I had a second one, and the 11 stars bowed down to my star, and so did the sun and the moon. He spoke the truth, just like Jesus would do. Jesus told the truth. Now, for you Bible students, you might want to make a quick note on this, that the sheaves speak of the world's resources, and the stars speak of the world's rulers. The sheaves are the world's resources, and the stars are the world's rulers. In other words, both the world's resources and world's rulers will all bow down to the greater than Joseph, and that is Jesus. Colossians chapter 1, so many places. Colossians 1 tells us that. It says, "And he, having made peace through the blood of his cross, by him will reconcile all things to himself, I say, whether they be things in the earth or things in heaven." And on Paul goes, talking about how all things are going to be brought together in submission to Christ. Resources, rulers, in fact, every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess that what? Jesus is Lord, absolutely. Well, his brethren, verse 12, they went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. Remember Shechem, our study last time? Shechem was the place where, what happened? Who might recall? Dinah was raped. Their sister Dinah was raped. Shechem was a worldly, carnal place. It's the place where Dinah was raped. It was the place where Levi and Simeon became mass murderers. Remember how they killed all the Shechemites? They tricked them into this false peace treaty. You guys all get circumcised and then we can intermarry and all the rest. So the Shechemites all got circumcised, and while they were recovering, Levi and Simeon, these older brothers of Joseph, took their swords and chopped up the Shechemites and killed them all. Killed all the men in that town there, in that one village, you see. Well, guess where his brothers go? They go back to Shechem. Interesting. And Israel, that's Jacob, said to Joseph, "Do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them." And Joseph said, verse 13, "Here am I." Your brothers, the father would say, your brethren, they're in a place where they ought not to be. They're in Shechem, a place of wickedness, a place of depravity, a place with a terrible history. And the father, Jacob or Israel, said to the son, "Will you go? Will you go check out and help out your brothers who are in Shechem?" And Joseph said, "Here am I." You see, it's a sneak preview. It's an insight into the nature of the relationship between the Father and the Son, God the Father and Jesus the Son. The people, the Father might say, the people are in Shechem. They're in debauchery. They're in depravity. They're in danger. Son, will you go? Will you go? Will you go to Shechem? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. He sent his Son. God the Father sent his Son to this Shechem. He knew that his Son would be in danger. He knew that his Son would be slaughtered. But he sent his Son to this Shechem. Just like the father here, Israel, is sending his son, Joseph, to Shechem. And the son said, "Here am I." Okay. No wonder Jesus would hear the Father thunder from heaven that day as he comes out of the baptism waters. "This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased." Because when Jesus was baptized that day in the Jordan River, what was he declaring? He knew that he was going to die and be buried and resurrected. And he was submitting to the Father's plan. And that's why the Father thundered from heaven, "This is my beloved Son. I'm pleased with him." He was willing to go all the way, not just to Shechem, but to Calvary, the crucifixion. And here the Father says to the Son, "Your brothers are in Shechem. I will send you to them. Here am I. Send me." And he said, verse 14, "Go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brother, well with the flocks, and bring me word again. I'm going to send you down there to Shechem, and I want you to come back to me ultimately." So he sent him out. The father, Israel or Jacob, same guy, sent his son Joseph. Verse 14 says, out of the vale or valley of Hebron to Shechem. What does Hebron mean? Who can recall? Hebron means fellowship. I'm sending you out of Hebron, the place of fellowship, to Shechem. Ultimately, there would be a time when Jesus would be sent to this world and be out of fellowship with his Father. When he was on the cross. "Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani," he cried. My God, why hast thou forsaken me?" as he hung on the tree. And the Father turned his back on the Son. Because the Son, he who knew no sin, became sin, that we might be the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. Oh, I'm only scratching the surface here. For you guys that want to think it through further, in every phrase you'll touch Jesus in this story. It's all about Jesus, you see. God wants you and God wants me to not be so concerned about creation, 5 words, concerning the creation of the universe, as he wants us to be aware of the Creator, Jesus Christ. I know you're interested, me too, in spacey stuff, in science questions, but God would say to you and me, ultimately, that's not the issue. I want you to know my Son. So when you read this story, when you read the Scriptures, look carefully, read prayerfully, and touch Jesus, and worship, and say, awesome. That you would be willing to leave the fellowship that you enjoyed in heaven. Jesus. Hebron. Heaven. To come to this Shechem. To save me. To make yourself available to me. To give salvation. Provide salvation for me. So here he goes. Joseph's on his way. From Hebron, fellowship, to Shechem, a place of carnality, wickedness. No doubt, one more note here, the father must have thought. Jacob, also Israel, same guy, must have thought, they're going to respect Joseph when he comes. He's got the big sleeves. They know that I have confidence in Joseph, that I have given promotion and elevation to Joseph. They know. My sons, my other boys, they know. Jesus told a story in Matthew chapter 21, didn't he? About a vineyard owner who went on a journey, and he left the workers there, and then he sent some messengers to pick up the rent from the vineyard. And the guys that were working the vineyard, what did they do? They beat up the messengers and killed them. And the owner of the vineyard sent messenger after messenger after messenger, Jesus said in this teaching he gave. And finally the owner said, well, look, they're not respecting my messengers, my servants. They're just beating on them, and they've ultimately killed them. I'm going to send my son. Him they will reverence. And so Jesus said how the owner of the vineyard then sent his son. And what did they do with the son? They said, this is the son. Let's kill him. And then the vineyard will be ours. Jesus was telling that story to his brethren, knowing that they killed prophet after prophet after prophet, and that they would then ultimately kill him, the Son. Here, Jacob Israel must have thought, well, my boys, they'll reverence my son, but they wouldn't, as we shall see. A certain man, verse 15, found Joseph. He was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, what are you seeking after? And he said, I seek my brethren. I'm looking for my brothers. I'm seeking my brothers. Jesus would say, the Son of Man came to seek and what? Save those that are lost. I seek my brethren, Joseph said, just as Jesus would say. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks. The man said, they've left Shechem. You think, oh, that would be good. They've left Shechem, the place of worldliness and all of that. For I heard them say, he said, let's go to Dothan. You know what Dothan means literally? Double sickness. It means sicko, we could say today. They left Shechem and went to the place of double sickness. Oh no. Joseph went after his brethren and found them in Dothan. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near to them, they conspired against him to slay him. They didn't even have contact with him. They just saw him from a distance, and they plotted and planned to kill him. Just as the brothers of Jesus would do, that is humanity. When he came to the people of Israel, before they even knew him, they already had launched their diabolical, damnable plots to destroy him. And they said, verse 19, one to another, behold, this dreamer comes. Come now, therefore, and let's slay him and cast him into some pit. And we'll say, some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. And Reuben heard it. Reuben was the oldest brother. Reuben is a man that wavers back and forth. He hears what his other brothers are going to do to Joey. And Reuben is kind of caught. He doesn't know exactly how to handle this situation. He's a lot like Pontius Pilate. Reuben heard of it, and he delivered him out of their hands. He said, let's not kill him. Don't kill him. No, hey guys, look. I know you want to kill little Joey. Don't kill him. Reuben said, shed no blood, but put him in this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that Reuben then might rid him out of their hands and deliver him up to the Father again. Reuben said, let's just put him in this pit. And Reuben was thinking, maybe that will satisfy my brothers. What did Pontius Pilate do? Who can recall? Who knows the story? What did Pontius Pilate do, hoping to satisfy the cry of the brothers, if you would, the countrymen of Jesus, who were yelling, crucify him? What did Pontius Pilate do with Jesus? Had him what? Had him flogged or scourged. He had him beaten and flogged with the flagellum, whipped to a place where he was beyond recognition. And then he brought him back out before the crowd that was there outside of the Praetorium in Jerusalem. And he said, behold the man. And the idea there is, look, aren't you satisfied? He's beaten beyond recognition. Aren't you satisfied? And they said, crucify him. Crucify him. Reuben is kind of in that same place. Let's just put him in the pit, hoping that that would satisfy the brothers who wanted to kill Joey, you see. It came to pass, verse 23, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, they stripped Joseph out of his coat of many colors or big sleeves that was on him. Who else had a coat that was stripped from him? Jesus, a seamless robe. And they took him, and they cast him into a pit. The pit they cast him into is a picture of, ultimately, the tomb. The pit was empty. The tomb had never had a body in it before. Joseph hewed out the tomb, Joseph of Arimathea. but no man had laid in the tomb previously. Again, you know the story, many of you. So they took him in the pit, Joseph, just like Jesus was placed in the tomb. The pit was empty and the tomb was empty that Jesus was placed in. And they sat down, verse 25, to eat bread. And they lifted up their eyes and looked. And here's Joey down in the pit, and these guys are eating their burgers. It wasn't at the burger thing, though, mind you. It was not there, Mike. It was Burger King. They were eating their bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels bearing spicery, balm, and myrrh. Does that ring a bell to anybody? And Judah, verse 26, one of the brothers, the older brothers of Joseph, said, "What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to these Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh." And his brethren were content. Hey, you know what this is picturing? Remember what they said? Just like here, Judah is saying, let's give him to these Gentiles. Let the Gentiles take care of him. Then we won't be responsible for his blood. They took Jesus, and they brought him before Pontius Pilate. Now, Pontius Pilate was the governor of Rome, who was Pontius Pilate a Jew or a Gentile? Who? A Gentile. A Roman, sure. A Gentile. Why did they do it? Pontius Pilate, you know the story when in John chapter 18, verse 31, right around there. When Pontius Pilate was there and they brought Jesus to him, they said, "Hey, you judge him." Pontius said, "You take care of him. This is your problem. I don't want to get involved in this thing." And what did they say? It is against our law. It's against the law here for us to execute a man. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. They said, Pontius, Mr. Gentile, it's unlawful for us. There's laws here. The Romans have imposed their law on this country that we cannot execute people. We cannot deal out justice as it relates to capital punishment. You've got to do that. Why? To fulfill prophecy. Because crucifixion was a Gentile form of execution. And the prophecies were clear. Psalm 22, Isaiah 53, lots of prophecies dealt with the manner in which Christ would die, and it was definitely to be by crucifixion, not by stoning or being hurled over a cliff. So these same leaders that had no problem stoning the woman said to Pontius Pilate piously, "Oh, we don't want to break the law, so you kill him." Just like these guys are saying, why should our blood be upon us? Let's let the Ishmaelites take care of Joey. We don't want his blood to be upon us, you see. So the brothers were content. Then there passed by these Midianite merchantmen, so these guys now come. They drew and they lifted up Joseph out of the pit. And they sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. Who else was sold for pieces of silver? They took Joseph's coat, verse 31, and they killed a kid of the goats and dipped the coat in the blood. And they sent the coat of many colors, or big sleeves, and they brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Know now whether it be thy son's coat or no. Is this Joseph's coat?" And he knew it. Verse 33, Jacob the dad, he knew it and said, "It is my son's coat. An evil beast has devoured him." Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces. Interesting. These brothers lied about the empty pit. They lied. They lied about the disappearance of their brother, whom they knew to be alive. They lied. What did the brothers, if you would, the countrymen, the religious leaders of Jesus, the religious leaders of Israel do when they heard the truth about the stone being rolled away, the grave being empty? What did they do? They told the Roman soldiers to what? Lie. And they paid, Matthew tells us, they paid those soldiers a great sum of money. Now, this is why it's so incongruous. It's so incredible. Roman soldiers who were guarding a tomb with the seal of the emperor on it. If that seal was broken, as it would be with the stone being rolled away that Easter Sunday morning, it would mean that those soldiers would have to be put to death, executed without question. They failed. That is, if they were standing there and fell asleep, like they were saying, the lie that the Roman soldiers said, they were paid to say by the Jewish leaders, well, we were sleeping, and while we fell asleep, the disciples of Jesus came and they took away the body. The story is incredible because in Roman military history, if a soldier fell asleep on his watch, particularly when the seal of the governor was on that tombstone, if you would, it was sealed up. If they fell asleep, they would be put to death, but they weren't. They were wealthy soldiers. There's all kinds of stories about how those soldiers went on and what they ultimately became with their money as they propagated their lie. These guys are doing that. They're lying. They're lying. Just like the Jewish leaders who knew that it wasn't true that the soldiers fell asleep. Jesus, yes, was devoured, in a sense, by the evil beast of our sin. He took my sin. It cost him his life, but he would have victory ultimately, just like Joseph in our story would not really be dead. And Jesus, let me tell you, really is not dead. He's alive. Well, Jacob doesn't know this, verse 34. He rent his clothes. He put sackcloth upon his loins. He mourned for his son many days. His other sons, verse 35, and all his daughters rose up to comfort him. But he refused to be comforted. He said, "For I will go down into the grave unto my son mourning. I'll mourn until the day I die," he said. Thus his father wept for him. We're going to see how wrong Jacob was here. Later on, when he thought he lost Benjamin, Joseph's younger brother, Jacob's smallest guy or youngest son, he cries out in despair, "Everything is against me." What he didn't know was everything was working out beautifully.